Grease, 15th May. Darling. Well, I said I'd write, and so I would have, only goodness it was rough, so didn't. Now everything's a bit more all right, so I'll tell you. Well, as you know, the cruise started at Monte Carlo, and when Papa and all of us went to Victoria, we found that the tickets didn't include the journey there. So goodness, how furious he was and said he wouldn't go. But Mum said, of course we must go, and we said that too. Only Papa had changed all his money into lire or francs on account of the foreigners being so dishonest. But he kept a shilling for the porter at Dover, being methodical. So then he had to change it back again, and that set him wrong all the way to Monte Carlo, and he wouldn't get me and Bertie a sleeper, and wouldn't sleep himself in his through being so angry. Goodness, how sad. Then everything was much more all right. The purser called him Colonel, and he likes his cabin. So he took Bertie to the casino, and he lost, and Bertie won. And I think Bertie got a bit plastered. At least he made a noise going to bed. He's in the next cabin, as if he were being sick, and that was before we sailed. Bertie's got some books on Baroque art on account of his being at Oxford. Well, the first day it was rough, and I got up and felt odd in the bath. Oh, the soap wouldn't work, on account of the salt water, you see, and came into breakfast. There was a list of so many things, including steak and onions. And there was a corking young man who said, "We're the only ones down, may I sit here?" And it was going beautifully. He had steak and onions. But it was no good. I had to go back to bed just when he was saying there was nothing he admired so much about a girl as her being a good sailor. Goodness, how sad. The thing is, not to have a bath and be very slow in all movements. Next day it was Naples, and we saw some Bertie churches, and then that bit that got blown up in an earthquake and a poor dog killed. They have a plaster cast of him. Goodness, how sad. Papa and Bertie saw some pictures we weren't allowed to see, and Bill drew them for me afterwards. And Miss P tried to look too. I haven't told you about Bill and Miss P, have I? Well, Bill's rather old, but clean-looking. Oh, I don't suppose he's very old, really, I mean. He's had a very disillusionary life, on account of his wife, who he says I won't say a word against, but she gave him the raspberry with a foreigner, and that makes him hate foreigners. Miss P is called Miss Phillips and is lousy. She wears a yachting cap and is a bitch. And the way she makes up to the second officer is no one's business. It's clear to the meanest intelligence he hates her, but it's part of the rules that all the sailors have to pretend to fancy the passengers. Who else is there? Well, lots of old ones. Papa is having a walk out with one called Lady Muriel something or other, who knew Uncle Ned. And there's a honeymoon couple, very embarrassing, and a clergyman, and a lovely pansy with a camera and a white suit, and lots of families from the industrial north. Bertie sends his love too. Lots of kisses. P.S. Mum bought a shawl and an animal made of lava. 18th May. This is a picture of Taormina. Mum bought a shawl here. Be funny, because Miss P got left, as she'd made chums only with the second officer and he wasn't allowed ashore. So when it came to getting into cars, Miss P had to pack in with a family from the industrial north. SS Glory of Greece, 20th May. Darling, hope you got PC from Sicily. The moral of that was not to make chums with sailors, though who I've made a chum of is the purser, who's different on account he leads a very cynical life with a gramophone in his cabin and as many cocktails as he likes and Welsh rarebit sometimes. And I said, "But do you pay for all these drinks?" And he said, "No, that's all right." So we have 3 days at sea, which the clergyman said is a good thing as it makes us all friendly. But it hasn't made me friendly with Miss P, who won't leave poor Bill alone, not taking any more chances at being left alone when she gets ashore. The purser says there's always someone like her on board. In fact, he says that about everyone except me, who he says quite rightly is different. Goodness, how decent. There are deck games. They're hell. And the day before we reach Haifa, there's to be a fancy dress dance. Papa is very good at deck games, especially one called shuffleboard, and eats more than he does in London, but I dare say it's all right. You have to hire dresses for the ball from the barber. I mean, we do, not you. Miss P has brought her own, so I've thought of a very clever thing. At least the purser suggested it, and that is to wear the clothes of one of the sailors. I tried his on and looked a treat. Poor Miss P. Bertie is madly unpop. He won't play any of the games. And being plastered the other night, too, he tried to climb down a ventilator, and the second officer pulled him out, and the old ones at the captain's table look askance at him. New word, that. Literary. Yes? No? I think the pansy's writing a book. He has a green fountain pen and green ink, but I couldn't see what it was. Pretty good about writing, you'll say, and so I am. Kisses, etc. Me. 23rd May. This is a photograph of the Holy Land and the famous Sea of Galilee. It's all V. Eastern, with camels. I have a lot to tell you about the ball. Such goings on, and we'll write very soon. Papa went off for the day with Lady M and came back saying enchanting woman knows the world. SS, Glory of Greece, next day. Well, the ball. We had to come in to dinner in our clothes, and everyone clapped as we came downstairs. I was pretty late, on account of not being able to make up my mind whether to wear the hat, and in the end did, and looked a corker. Well, it was rather a faint clap for me, considering. And when I looked about, there were about 20 girls and some women all dressed like me. How cynical the purser turns out to be. Bertie looked horribly dull as an Apache. Mum and Papa were sweet. Miss P had a ballet dress from the Russian ballet, which couldn't have been more unsuitable. So we had champagne for dinner and were jolly and threw paper streamers. And I threw mine before it was unrolled and hit Miss P on the nose. Ha, ha. So feeling matey, I said to the steward, "Isn't this fun?" And he said, "Yes, for them who hasn't got to clear it up. Goodness, how sad." Of course, Bertie was plastered and went a bit far, particularly in what he said to Lady M. Then he sat in the cynical purser's cabin in the dark and cried until Bill and I found him, and Bill gave him some drinks. And what do you think he went off with? Miss P. And we didn't see either of them again. It only shows into what degradation the demon drink can drag you. Him, I mean. Then who should I meet but the young man who had steak and onions on the first morning and is called Robert, and said, "I've been trying to meet you again all voyage." Then I bitched him a bit. Goodness, how decent. Poor Mum got taken up by Bill, and he told her all about his wife and how she disillusioned him with the foreigner. Tomorrow we reach Port Side, DV, which is Latin, in case you didn't know, meaning God willing. And we're all to go up the Nile and to Cairo for a week, with NPC as Sphinx. Kisses. 30th May. This is the Sphinx. Goodness, how sad. 31st May. This is the temple of someone. Darling, I can't wait to tell you. I'm engaged to Arthur. Arthur's the one I thought was a pansy. Bertie thinks Egyptian art is being artistic. Kisses. 1st June. This is Tutankhamun's famous tomb. Bertie says it's vulgar and is engaged to Miss P, so he's not one to speak. And I call her Mabel now. Gee, how S. Bill won't speak to Bertie, Robert won't speak to me, Papa and Lady M seem to have had a row. There was a man with a snake in a bag, also a little boy who told my fortune, which is very prosperous. Mum bought a shawl. Love, etc. 2nd June. Saw this mosque today. Robert's engaged to a new girl called something or other who's lousy. SS, Glory of Greece, 4th June. Darling. Well, so we all came back from Egypt pretty excited. And the cynical purser said, "What news?" And I said, "News? Well, I'm engaged to Arthur, and Bertie's engaged to Miss P. She's called Mabel now, which is hardest of all to bear," I said, "and Robert to a lousy girl. And Papa had a row with Lady M, and Bill had a row with Bertie, and Robert's lousy girl was awful to me, and Arthur was sweet." The cynical purser wasn't a bit surprised, on account, he said, people always get engaged and have quarrels on the Egyptian trip every cruise. So I said I wasn't in the habit of getting engaged lightly, thank you. And he said I wasn't apparently in the habit of going to Egypt, so I won't speak to him again, nor will Arthur. All love, etc. SS, Glory of Greece. Sweet. This is Algiers. Not very Eastern, in fact full of frogs. It's all off with Arthur. I was right about him at the first. I'm engaged to Robert, which is much better for all concerned, really, particularly Arthur, on account of what I said originally. First impression's always right, yes? No? Robert and I drove about all day in the Botanic Gardens, and goodness, he was decent. Bertie got plastered and had a row with Mabel, Miss P again, so that's all right too. And Robert's lousy girl spent all day on board with the second officer. Mum bought a shawl. Bill told Lady M about his disillusionment, and she told Robert, who said, "Yes, we all know." So Lady M said it was very unreticent of Bill, and she had very little respect for him and didn't blame his wife or the foreigner. Love. I forgot what I said in my last letter, but if I mentioned a lousy man called Robert, you can take it as unsaid. This is still Algiers, and Papa ate dubious oysters, but he's all right. Bertie went to a house full of tarts when he was plastered, and is pretty unreticent about it, as Lady M would say. Kisses, etc. SS, Glory of Greece, England. So now we're back home, and sang Old Lang Syne. Is that how you spell it? And I kissed Arthur, but won't speak to Robert, and he cried. Oh, not Robert, I mean Arthur. So then Bertie apologised to most of the people he'd insulted, but Miss P walked away pretending not to hear. Goodness, what a bitch. Kisses, lots of love, me.